Let's be honest, most relationships don't break all at once. They wear down, they fade. Not because love disappears, but because connection is neglected. We think if we can just go back to how things were, everything will be okay. But the truth is, you can't fix what's broken by pretending it never cracked. You have to go deeper. The first step to healing isn't asking, what happened to us? It's asking, why did we come together in the first place? We often begin the process of healing a relationship by examining everything that went wrong. The arguments, the distance, the unmet needs, the hurtful words. We replay the moments that fractured us, hoping to identify the exact point where things fell apart. But rarely do we pause to remember what brought us together in the first place. We fixate on the pain, but forget the purpose. And in doing so, we lose the very essence of why the relationship mattered. If we want to fix what's broken, we must begin not with the wreckage, but with the reason we cared at all. There was a moment, maybe more than one, when that person made you feel deeply seen. There was laughter that didn't feel forced, connection that didn't need to be earned, comfort that felt effortless. In the beginning, love was simple, not because it lacked complexity, but because it didn't require justification. You showed up for each other without a scoreboard, without strategy. It was about presence, not performance. That matters. That is not insignificant. That is the foundation upon which everything else was built. But when pain enters the picture, we tend to bury those memories under resentment. We say things like, I don't know why I ever loved them, or maybe it was never real. But those are defense mechanisms, not truths. It was real. It mattered. And if there's any chance of rebuilding, you have to be honest about that. Because without honoring the original connection, all your efforts to heal will feel hollow. You'll be trying to reconstruct something you've already emotionally abandoned. You can't repair what you secretly believe was always broken. So take a moment, ask yourself, what drew me to this person? What did I admire? What did I feel when we were at our best? Was it the way they made you feel safe? Was it how they challenged you to grow? Was it the way they listened, really listened, without trying to fix you? These aren't small things. These are sacred. These are the soul prints of the relationship. And when you revisit them, not to manipulate your emotions, but to anchor your clarity. Now, this isn't about romanticizing the past or denying the damage. It's about giving the relationship enough dignity to be seen in full color. The highs and the lows. The beautiful beginnings and the heartbreaking mistakes. Because love is never just a straight line. It's a series of choices. Some we got right, some we didn't. But we did choose. We chose them. And that choice was real, even if it didn't end the way we hoped. When you begin from that place of honesty, of remembering why you loved, you unlock compassion, not just for them, but for yourself. You soften the armor. You let go of the story that they were only a disappointment or that you were only a fool. And you start to relate to the relationship not from bitterness, but from wisdom. You see what needs to be healed not as a flaw in your judgment, but as a wound worth tending. This perspective shift is everything. Because when you begin from love, not just the memory of it, but the intention of it, you engage in repair from a place of purpose, not punishment. You stop asking, why did this break me? And start asking, what is still worth saving? And that single question changes everything. It doesn't guarantee reconciliation, but it guarantees clarity. And clarity is what we need most when we're standing in the rubble, trying to decide whether to rebuild or release. So yes, examine how it broke. Understand the lessons. But don't skip the beginning. Don't forget what made your heart open in the first place, because that is the truest compass you have. Not the hurt. But the truth is, most relationships don't explode. They erode, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. And more often than not, that erosion is born from silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that replaces vulnerability with avoidance. The kind that quietly robs a relationship of its connection until what's left is distance dressed as routine. It starts small. One person feels unheard, but doesn't speak up because they don't want to cause a scene. The other senses tension, but brushes it off, assuming it will pass. A need goes unmet, but instead of expressing it, it gets tucked away. A boundary is crossed, but no one says a word. Day by day, unspoken frustrations, unaddressed emotions, and unshared truths pile up like dust under a rug. It's not dramatic, but it's deadly to intimacy. Silence feels safer in the moment. Speaking up feels like a risk. So we avoid the hard conversations. We postpone the uncomfortable questions. We prioritize peace over honesty, even when that peace is just surface level. We tell ourselves it's not a big deal, or I'll bring it up later. But later never comes. And what doesn't get spoken doesn't just disappear, it festers. It shapes how we see the other person. It creates mental stories and emotional distance. We begin to assume rather than ask, to criticize internally rather than connect outwardly. Eventually, that distance becomes normal. We mistake coexistence for connection. We become two people sharing a space, a schedule, or a life without truly sharing ourselves. And it's not until the weight of the silence becomes unbearable that someone finally says, I don't even know who we are anymore. But by then, the connection has been so chipped away that repair feels impossible. The tragedy is, this kind of slow fading isn't fueled by hatred or conflict. It's fueled by neglect. Not the kind that's abusive or intentional, but the kind that's passive. The kind that comes from busyness, fear, or the assumption that love can survive without maintenance. But relationships don't take care of themselves. They're living systems that require intentional nourishment. And the primary way we nourish a relationship is through communication. Not just talking, but being real, raw, and present. You don't have to fight to damage a relationship. You just have to stop showing up fully. You just have to let your inner world stay hidden. You just have to let too many I'm fine pass without question. Because when people stop feeling safe to speak, they start pulling back emotionally. And when emotional presence dies, so does the depth of the relationship. If you want to fix what's broken, you have to go back to the silences. What didn't get said that should have? What did you pretend wasn't hurting you? What did you hide out of fear of being too much or not enough? And are you willing to stop doing that now? Healing requires words. It requires truth. And more importantly, it requires creating an environment where those truths are not punished, but welcomed. Where both people feel safe enough to say, this hurt me, or I need something different, without fear of dismissal or shame. Because when two people decide that nothing matters more than being honest with each other, not even being right or being comfortable, then even the deepest erosion can begin to repair. The silence that erodes can be replaced with presence that rebuilds. But it takes courage. It takes choice. When something breaks in a relationship, our first instinct is often to find someone to blame. We want to point a finger, assign fault, make sense of the pain by putting it on someone else's shoulders. And while that might give us a temporary sense of control, it rarely leads to true healing. Because fixing what's broken is not about blame, it's about brave ownership. Blame separates, ownership connects. Leadership separates, ownership connects. Blame hardens, ownership opens. And if you truly want to repair a relationship, you must be willing to shift from accusation to accountability. Blame says, you did this to me. Ownership asks, how did we get here? Blame demands change from someone else. Ownership initiates change within. It takes courage to look at the damage and ask not just what the other person did wrong, but how you contributed to the dynamic. That doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior or minimizing your pain. It means refusing to live in the illusion that relationships are one-sided equations. Even in situations where one person's actions were more visibly damaging, there is still value in examining your role, not from guilt, but from growth. Brave ownership is not about self-blame. It's about self-awareness. It's the ability to say, I ignored the red flags, or I shut down when I should have opened up, or I didn't speak my truth because I was afraid of losing them. It's the willingness to confront the parts of you that chose silence over honesty, resentment over repair, withdrawal over vulnerability. These are not confessions of weakness. They are declarations of strength. Because nothing is more powerful than a person who takes responsibility for their own emotional reality. In relationships, we often wait for the other person to make the first move, to apologize, to change, to admit fault. But that waiting becomes a silent war of pride where no one wins. Someone has to go first. Someone has to say, "This is how I hurt you, and I see it now." Someone has to say, "This is what I failed to communicate, and I own that." And often, when one person leads with ownership, it softens the other. So, my son, when one person leads with ownership, it softens the other. It signals safety. It says, we're not here to battle, we're here to rebuild. What makes ownership brave is that it opens you up to vulnerability. It means acknowledging your blind spots, your patterns, your fears. It means being honest about the ways you protect yourself at the expense of connection. That kind of honesty can feel terrifying, especially if you've been hurt. But it's also the only path to real intimacy. Because love doesn't thrive in perfection, it thrives in transparency. Blame focuses on the past. Ownership focuses on the future. When you stop replaying what they did wrong and start asking what you can do differently now, you reclaim your power. You move from being a victim of the relationship to a conscious co-creator of what comes next. And that shift is everything. It changes the energy. It makes space for healing, not just reacting. By saying, I choose to recognize what might be true. When you start to, there is no quick fix for what's broken, but there is a way forward. And that way begins when you choose humility over ego, reflection over retaliation, accountability over accusation. You don't need to be perfect to repair a relationship. You just need to be present, honest, and willing to take responsibility for your part. That's brave, that's powerful, and that's what real love requires. So stop asking who's more wrong, start asking who's more willing. Because the willingness to own your truth, not just point to theirs, is what turns breakdowns into breakthroughs. Anyone can say, I'm sorry, but not everyone chooses to live in alignment with that apology. In the end, it's not the words that rebuild trust, it's the consistency that does. Consistency is what makes people feel safe again. It's what slowly stitches back the parts that were torn apart. It's what proves the change is real. When someone apologizes, what we're really listening for is more than just their voice. We're listening for their commitment. We're asking silently, will you do it again? Will you show up differently now? Will you follow through on the healing you promised? And only time, paired with behavior, can answer those questions. That's why consistency matters. It's not just about repetition, it's about reliability. It's about being able to depend on someone's presence, their integrity, their growth. Trust, once broken, doesn't return because of a single conversation. It returns gradually, through patterns. It returns when actions align with words, not once or twice, but over and over again. It's rebuilt in the quiet, ordinary moments, when someone chooses honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, when they stay calm in conflict rather than reverting to old defenses, when they listen without interrupting, when they remember the little things that matter to you. These may seem small, but they're not. They are the building blocks of emotional safety. Consistency is hard because it demands discipline. It requires being intentional day after day, not just when it's convenient. Anyone can be kind for a week. Anyone can show up when they feel guilty or when emotions are high. But real consistency shows up when no one's keeping score. It happens when you choose to be patient even when you're frustrated. When you check in emotionally even when you're tired. When you honor the relationship even when no one is watching. That kind of consistency is what transforms relationships from fragile to strong. This is especially true when there's been pain. After hurt, people become guarded. Their nervous system is scanning for patterns, looking to see if the danger is gone or if it's coming back. And when they see inconsistency, words that don't match behavior, it reinforces fear. But when they see steady, predictable, respectful behavior, that fear begins to soften. They slowly start to believe that maybe it's safe to let their guard down again. Not because they were convinced by a powerful apology, but because they were shown repeatedly that healing is possible. It's important to understand that consistency isn't about perfection. No one gets it right all the time. But the difference is that consistent people don't make the same mistakes over and over while expecting forgiveness to function like an eraser. Instead, they reflect, adjust, and apply what they've learned. They take their apology seriously enough to change. And that change, repeated over time, becomes trust. So if you're trying to repair a broken relationship, don't put all your energy into crafting the perfect apology. Say what needs to be said with honesty, yes, but then back it up. Back it up with new habits, new choices, and new levels of emotional responsibility. Show every day that you are someone who can be counted on. Let your apology live in your actions, because in the end, healing isn't found in grand gestures or beautiful words. It's found in the quiet, consistent presence of someone who means what they say and proves it, not once, but always. That's how love is restored. That's how broken things are rebuilt. With time, intention, and the trust that only consistency can create. Emotional safety is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. It's what allows us to open up, to be vulnerable, to express our needs without fear of being dismissed or attacked. But once that safety is broken, whether through betrayal, neglect, harsh words, or repeated emotional absence, it doesn't come back just because someone says, "You should trust me." Emotional safety can't be demanded, it has to be rebuilt. Slowly, patiently, and through consistent, trustworthy action. One of the biggest mistakes people make in damaged relationships is expecting immediate restoration. They say things like, "I said I was sorry," or "You need to let it go," as if safety is something you can flip back on with a switch. But emotional safety doesn't work like that. It's not given because someone asks for it. It's granted when someone earns it. And earning it means showing up differently, consistently, without pressure or entitlement. It means proving over time that you're no longer a threat to their peace. When someone has been hurt, their nervous system becomes guarded. They become hyper-aware, alert to signs that the same pain might happen again. You can't logic that fear away. You can't talk them out of it. What you can do is understand it, respect it, give it the time and space it needs, and more importantly, show them through your actions that the conditions that once caused harm are no longer present. Rebuilding emotional safety isn't about perfection, it's about presence. It's about being steady. It's about creating an environment where someone can be fully themselves without bracing for impact. That takes humility. It takes patience, and it takes a willingness to sit with discomfort instead of rushing to fix it or demand forgiveness. Because if someone is still hurting, pressuring them to move on doesn't speed up the healing, it shuts it down. Often, the one who caused the harm becomes focused on their own discomfort. They want to stop feeling guilty. They want to go back to how things used to be. But true repair isn't about the comfort of the one who caused the pain. It's about the emotional safety of the one who felt it. And that shift in mindset is critical. You have to move from seeking relief to seeking understanding. You have to stop asking, "When will you trust me again?" and start asking, "What do you need in order to feel safe with me?" And if you're the one who's been hurt, it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to take your time. Rebuilding emotional safety isn't about punishing someone. It's about protecting your peace while observing if real change is happening. It's about noticing if the other person is genuinely trying to understand your experience or if they're just trying to skip to the part where everything is fixed. The truth is, emotional safety is built in the small, repeated acts of care. It's in listening without defending. It's in honoring someone's pain without rushing to justify your behavior. It's in doing what you say you're going to do, being who you say you are, and showing up not just when things are good, but especially when they're hard. That's when emotional safety is either rebuilt or broken again. It's also important to note that emotional safety is mutual. It's not just about one person doing all the work. Once trust begins to return, both people have to contribute to a new dynamic, one rooted in honesty, compassion, and accountability. It's a joint effort, not a solo performance. So if you're trying to repair something that's been damaged, remember this. Don't rush the process, don't demand closeness, and don't confuse apology with resolution. Emotional safety doesn't return because you want it to. It returns because you consistently create it. One moment, one choice, one interaction at a time. When a relationship breaks or goes through a painful season, there's a natural tendency to want to go back to how things were before the argument, before the betrayal, before the disconnection. We say things like, let's get back to how we used to be, or I just want things to be normal again. But the truth is, once something has broken, you can't recreate the old. You can't rewind time or pretend the damage never happened. And honestly, you shouldn't want to. Because the goal isn't to restore the past, it's to build something new together, something stronger, more conscious, more honest. Clinging to the past becomes a trap. It keeps you chasing memories instead of creating new meaning. It keeps you focused on what used to be instead of engaging with what is. And the danger in that is, you'll end up resenting the present for not living up to a romanticized version of history. But nostalgia, while powerful, isn't always accurate. What feels like a better time may have only felt that way because certain issues hadn't surfaced yet. Sometimes what we're really missing is the version of ourselves that existed before we were hurt, not necessarily the relationship as it was. That's why healing requires vision. You can't move forward while fixated on what's behind you. You have to look at the relationship now, not for what it was, but for what it could become. And to do that, both people need to bring a willingness to grow, to evolve, and to redefine what love looks like in this next chapter. It means asking new questions. What do we want now? What do we value now? How can we meet each other differently? Not because we're trying to replicate an old spark, but because we're willing to create new fire. This process takes courage, because letting go of the old also means grieving it. It means acknowledging that some things may never return, that the innocence, the blind trust, or the effortless connection you once had may not look the same. But grief isn't a sign that love is gone. It's a sign that love mattered. And once you move through that grief with honesty and compassion, you create space for something deeper, something chosen, not just remembered. Building something new together also means changing how you communicate, how you handle conflict, how you show up emotionally. It means refusing to fall back into old habits just because they feel familiar. It means saying, let's do this differently now, and then holding each other accountable to that new standard. It's about crafting a relationship that reflects who you are today, not who you were when you first met. And that's where the real beauty lies. Because love that survives difficulty has the potential to be even more profound than love that never faced a storm. It's more rooted, more real, more intentional. You don't just love each other blindly. You love each other knowing what's at stake, knowing what it takes, and still choosing to stay. Not because of history, but because of hope. Letting go of the old doesn't mean forgetting it. It means honoring it for what it taught you while not letting it define you. It means using those lessons to shape a relationship that is more resilient, more honest, and more attuned to who you both are now. That's not regression. That's progress. So if you're trying to rebuild after a breakdown, stop chasing what you lost. Start creating what you need. Start designing a new relationship that reflects the truth of today, not the comfort of yesterday. Because what you build together now, intentionally, consciously, and with open hearts, can be far more beautiful than anything that ever existed before.